be on mute here for a sec.
All right, maybe give it one more minute and then we can get started. All right, awesome. Should we get going? Kat, do you want to start the recording or do you start it?
Yes, recording is going.
Okay, great. Yeah, people will keep streaming in here, but we can get started. Yeah, so as I posted in general, the Nine Realms team has been talking with some members of the Polygon team to explore an integration into THORChain of Polygon. And we think this is a very exciting opportunity for both ecosystems. So we wanted to kind of have a public discussion in the Discord where people can, meet the members of the Polygon team that we've been talking to, Jack Melnick over here, and we can discuss this integration from the perspective of both ecosystems. And we'll do a Q&A, so community members can feel free to come up, ask us questions about what we're thinking about, and just have kind of an open discussion about it. So I guess first to get started, Jack, do you want to give yourself a quick introduction?
Sure, absolutely. Great being here, guys. Longtime THORChain user. Thanks to my friend Matt Gibson, who's actually in the chat right here. And so been around for a while, big fan of the product in a lot of ways, and really excited to find some ways to work together. A little bit of background on me. I started my career in traditional finance, have been degening in DeFi for a lot of years, first anonymously, and then leading a research team at a company called The Tie, which was an institutionally focused software and data company. Since then, I moved on to Polygon, where I lead our DeFi business development team. And as you may have seen over the past few months, and it will continue through the rest of 2023, our focus this year is on DeFi first and foremost. And so, as a core part of that, we have to get all the base layers, the entrenched giants of the space, of which THORChain is no doubt one of them. And so, made a ton of sense to begin the conversation and see where the community's at, and try and find some ways to work together. And really excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here. I think, a lot of people in the community, in our ecosystem have been talking about Polygon for a long time. We're all kind of excited about exploring this. So I'm just curious to hear, Jack, from your perspective, why, kind of where this idea came from the Polygon side. Like, where do you think a THORChain integration could be big for the Polygon ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of different places that we can find areas to work together, to be honest. But right off the bat, just enabling cross-chain swaps, and specifically, obviously, like everyone here knows it, but being able to bridge native BTC is going to be huge in a lot of ways. Right now, obviously, there aren't a ton of ways to kind of use native BTC or even like make use of that bridge on other chains. One of the things that we've been thinking a lot about internally at Polygon is something as simple as like creating a better Bitcoin native bridge asset, think the equivalent of BTCB, that is going to be effectively used as a collateral asset in borrow lending protocols, can offer people on Polygon exposure to like better core assets across the board through a protocol like THORChain. And most importantly, just enabling like sustainable sources of yield on chain through mechanisms and through protocols that are understood and that have that kind of not only like community dedication, but that time tested background and security that only really comes in crypto and in DeFi with something like THORChain.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think one important aspect of this is obviously, everyone in the THORChain ecosystem and community knows that like THORChain is not a traditional bridge in that it's really its main function is cross-chain swaps, in a decentralized fashion. So, swapping Polygon to Bitcoin, ETH to Bitcoin, And, I think one thing that's really interesting is, if you think about on-ramps into the Polygon ecosystem, an integration with THORChain would basically mean, you have native on-ramps from the 8 connected blockchains right now, and then, as THORChain continues to add new chains, you basically have that built in already. So curious to hear, Jack, like from your perspective, like what is the appetite for like cross-chain swaps in the Polygon ecosystem? Can you see a lot of potential use cases in projects that are, either starting up or kind of, main projects in the Polygon ecosystem, I guess?
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a really good question, and I kind of I feel like perhaps skipped over it a little bit more than I should have, just because I figured a lot of people in this chat like have such a good understanding of what's going on behind the scenes at THORChain, and perhaps didn't qualify that I understood well enough. But really, like the way that I see the appetite functioning on Polygon right off the bat, like where we are today, is already going to be significantly better than a lot of other ecosystems. For the sole reason that we're already effectively a two-chain model, right? Like we already have a base POS chain, right? The infamous like POS side chain. But we also have zkEVM rolling out, right? And so that's already kind of like a two chain approach where a lot of the protocols that are being built on Polygon are looking for good ways to conduct cross-chain swaps across both those platforms. And that's true also of the protocols that are going to be launching on zkEVM, who are, for the most part, not going to just be on zkEVM, right? There's going to be some element of cross-chain functionality built into a lot of these protocols off the bat, like by the very nature of what we're doing. That's going to continue, right? Like we're doing a ton of really cool work behind the scenes, stuff like how can we work with a few of the other like really large cross-chain protocols that are more Cosmos focused to bring like native IBC to Polygon. And then all of a sudden, by deploying on Polygon, you effectively open yourself up to cross-chain swaps into some of the Cosmos ecosystems that we're connected with via the IBC, right? And so across the board, like that sort of mindset of, hey, it's not an island, it's a continent, and we really need to build all of the individual pieces that make that a cohesive stack. All of that sort of work gets underpinned by cross-chain swaps, as we know. And at this point, personally, like I'm very much a believer in the fact that we have like a lot of chains that are very successful in that work in the vast majority of ways. And what we really need is better connectivity and liquidity and reduced liquidity fragmentation across all of those chains. And so just from the like basic Polygon perspective, or even from me speaking as Jack, not even as the Polygon rep, like this is something that we have spent so much time on, and I have spent so much time on over the past like month and a half, really making sure that we're on top of, and we're kind of leading the intellectual war here in terms of like, here's how the future is going to look. What do we actually need to integrate to accomplish it?
And you guys have been making like really big strides, especially like your guys zkEVM and just thinking about cross-chain interoperability. So I'm also wondering where you think like POS fits in versus like your guys zkEVM, because you guys are already going to have multiple ecosystems spanning across like a couple different chains there. So yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good question. And so the way that I kind of think about it right now is it's not going to be like a hard fork or something, right? Where day one, everything that's happening on POS immediately transition to zkEVM, right? Like it's going to be the way that you should really think about it is like day one of zkEVM on March 27th. Everyone that's been working on testnet will be deploying, and they have a good understanding of how their code base will function. But at the same time, like all of the services that are built on like sequencing the chain and like oracles and all of those sorts of deployments, they don't get like priority access to the chain, right? And so in many ways, like the initial deployment of zkEVM is really just that. Like it's a mainnet beta, it's fully open, anyone can bridge funds onto it and check it out. Protocols can deploy completely open source and permissionless. But there will be like some minor gates on the bridge, our smart contract bridge, to prevent any sort of like major exploit just as we're testing stuff out, right, from a safety perspective. And beyond that too, like there's a lot of protocols with entrenched fan bases and good liquidity functionality on POS. And so as we are simultaneously working out the final kinks, making sure all the core infrastructure is built out on zkEVM, POS will function side by side. But internally, without a shred of a doubt, our goal is to move everything over to zkEVM over time, right? Because speaking of like tech, not as an end in itself, but as a goal, like Polygon's goal has always been to scale Ethereum. When it was first founded, that was intended to be done through a sidechain because that was the best in class tech at the time. Over time, we've clearly realized that like layer twos are a better scaling solution. So pivoting to that, and ZK fraud proofs are a better and faster scaling solution than optimistic fraud proofs. And so we have leaned into that, right? And so as far as we are concerned, we are trying to migrate everything to zkEVM. That's why we are talking about launching THORChain on zkEVM rather than POS. And as a result, too, it also gives us a little bit of flexibility in terms of what our kind of go-to-market looks like. We can seed a pool or we can work together, and like the amount of liquidity that you functionally need to enable cross-chain swaps onto zkEVM. 5 years or less, like we're talking 1 year or less, ideally, right? Like by the end of this year, our goal is to have begun migrating the vast majority of liquidity to zkEVM. And so within that context, it's kind of an interesting opportunity because it's also like there's going to be a lot of people looking to build on top of cross-chain swaps on zkEVM. And at the same time, there's going to be no core infrastructure that's necessarily there that has already claimed mindshare and wallet share or whatever it is, right? And you see an avenue down the line towards more liquidity migrating onto Polygon because we're moving all of the stuff off of POS and onto zkEVM. And all of these native protocols like the Liquidities of the world, which could never launch on POS, are really, really engaged in launching on layer twos. And so there's a lot of really interesting different reasons that we are pro doing this on ZK and why we think the opportunity on ZK from the THORChain perspective is really large. And so even if people want to just like throw questions or chat or come up to the stage later, however you guys want to run it, I defer. Like there's a ton of different, I guess, nuances here that I'm happy to dig into in more depth down the line.
Yeah, so I'm just going to answer. So Mogarky posted a question. This would be the first L2 integration coming to THORChain. Can you talk about the technical mechanics of how this would work a bit? What are the key differences from existing L1 integrations? And I can just speak from the THORChain side, like the technical aspects of the integration is that it actually wouldn't be different from an L1 integration at all. THORChain, internally does not have any concept of L1 versus L2. So it would be the same thing as essentially the Ethereum or Avalanche integration, where obviously validators would be running the Polygon POS or zkEVM full node and be making observations against that blockchain. And then, it would have the observation layer and the signing layer. So effectively on the THORChain side, it is the same as an L1 integration, although yes, we would then have this really exciting and like incredible exposure to, one of the most exciting L2s that, out there. So from our side, it's actually, pretty simple, which is great. Yeah, and so I'm curious. Yeah, so Jack, so I'm curious. So like, if it, if you could wave a magic wand, like, and we're doing this THORChain integration, you would think that you would want it, on zkEVM over POS, right?
Yeah, and that's for a few reasons, and like I'll kind of spell out a lot of the factors in here just to show, I think, the community to a degree how much work and thought we've kind of already put into this behind the scenes too. Like we're aware that the validator and node running cost on zkEVM is higher than it is on POS, and that's a factor towards ensuring that the THORChain validators get towards profitability as soon as possible. The main reason for this deployment, like I said, is because of the future potential of what's happening, but also just the level of deployments that I foresee happening on zkEVM down the line. Once all this stuff is fully worked out, which we anticipate to be about like a 1 to 2 month like initial hiccup, and then really building it out from there. Like there's going to be new protocols launching every day, and on top of that, there's going to be existing liquidity continuously migrating over from POS, right? And so this is very much so going to be a one-way street. It's not like the protocols that are launching on zkEVM are going to be coming back to POS down the line. Like it's going to be a one-way bridge, right? And so launching on zkEVM from a future-looking perspective for the platform just makes infinitely more sense.
One question that's being asked from the audience is, I don't know if you have any info about the node requirements, the infrastructure requirements for the zkEVM.
Yep.
Would you care to share any of that?
Yeah, so what I'll do is I just posted a link in the chat. This is, I'm double checking this with the tech team to make sure it's accurate. If this is not accurate, I will pass it back into the Discord, pass it back to the Nine Realms team to make sure everyone has most up-to-date information. But here's current node requirements. It's 16 gigs of RAM, 4-core CPU, and a 20 gigabyte SSD, which will increase over time as the proofs get more intensive. Right, like our basic goal is to start the chain at around like low to mid teens TPS and then go from there. Right, yeah. So Son of Odin, it's because of the threshold at start. Like we're only gonna be running in mid teens TPS to start, and then the goal is to expand that up down the line. Like theoretical throughput of zkEVM should be higher down the line. I kind of agree that some of the numbers look a little bit weird. That's why I'm checking with the ZK team, and we'll come back to confirm that everything is correct. But the way that from the node requirement side, like we will be up to date on that. In terms of strategy, grants, integration, popular dApps, yeah, this is something that we've been talking with the Nine Realms team a lot. We Polygon as a company actually shut down our grants program about 4 months ago, despite what Twitter may have you believe. And so that's been largely on the back burner for a while. The reasons for that are kind of twofold, and I think a lot of them will make sense to the community given some of the other deployments that we've seen from THORChain. First is that like grants don't necessarily actually enable success for the protocol necessarily, right? Like it helps attract some of the initial liquidity, but it doesn't actually help THORChain find that organic product market fit and ensure that once the liquidity rewards run out, that validators will be able to run profitably in a swap environment. And so the way that we're really thinking about pushing the THORChain ecosystem on Polygon is much, much more focused in terms of like actually giving you boots on the ground support, right? And so what does that mean? That means that like you have effectively like the full might of the Polygon BD team as well as the marketing team kind of behind you. That means full support around launch and integration, but more importantly, really, really thoughtful relationship building with a lot of these core cross-chain swap platforms that are going to be looking to build on THORChain, right? And just ensuring that, you know, whether it's from us pushing THORChain to products that are looking for a solution like this that we are working with, or whether it's from Nine Realms or THORChain community members, like you guys can literally reach out to me if you have suggestions for protocols that you see deployed on zkEVM that you think would be good THORChain integrations, right? Like I'm an incredibly open person. My goal is to help push the cross-chain swaps into Polygon, like help push Polygon DeFi into like the super modern era. And the way that we do that is like by very active communication. And so it can be a two-way bridge. My goal is basically just to get as many different dApps plugged in as makes sense and build out any core infrastructure, particularly around stuff like native Bitcoin bridging with THORChain as a primary partner to help make sure that we're getting some of that real organic product market fit built on what THORChain is really good on, rather than just like throwing liquidity grant money at you.
Yeah, plus one to that, like the idea of these just unsustainable incentives is kind of, we've seen that come and go. And so if we have a setup for long-term sustainability from the get-go, that makes a ton of sense. And also what's particularly exciting about what you just said there, Jack, is like there's a kind of it's an ecosystem that's about ready to hit its stride, right? In terms of kind of where things are going. And then having native asset backbones plugged in behind this, you wind up seeing what an ecosystem can be when it's got like centralized exchange experience, like compatibility baked in at the base levels between protocols. And that's never been done before. And so anyways, from just like all levels of the stack, that's a real interesting take.
Yeah.
I
appreciate that.
Second that because, yeah, of course. I mean, I think, you know, the reason why this is so exciting for the Nine Realms team and a lot of people is that like exactly what Jack is talking about, where, you know, we launched, for example, AVAX, and, you know, we had, you know, some buy-in from the ecosystem, but not really buy-in from the Avalanche team. And that, you know, it made it hard to bootstrap the integration. And again, like the effectiveness of maybe incentives, you know, incentives go away. So how do we create sustainable yield and sustainable income for validators who are taking on this additional cost? And if the perspective of the Polygon team is that, yeah, we're bought in, like we're going to go plug you into all the major projects in Polygon to ensure that volume, that is the sustainable way to do it. And that is really the only right way to do it. And so this is just, you know, a super exciting concept for us, because I think this would be a major step in this would be kind of the new model of launching new L2 or just new chain integrations in general, is kind of more of a collaboration between THORChain and and the team of the blockchain, and just kind of go from there. Just gonna answer a question that came in. So what would be the asset paired with Rune? So again, yeah, for any blockchain integration, it would be the gas asset of that chain. So for a Polygon integration, it would be Matic. So it would be a Matic pool that would be seated there. And then the other thing I just wanted to highlight, I think Orion posted. So one thing we're kind of doing, and again, everyone knows that the conversation around adding new chains is really centered around the validators, because the validators are taking on this additional cost and risk of running the infrastructure. So then how do we kind of determine, is this going to be worth it for the validators? Is the swap volume going to generate enough liquidity fees where they're going to be making up and eventually profitable in this additional integration? So Orion posted a public doc. It's a public Google Doc, so be sure not to dox yourself. Don't look at it in a tab that you're signed into Google. You can just do it incognito tab. But this is kind of the some of the data that we're looking at, and these volume targets that we're looking at. And we're making a few kind of assumptions here. For example, we're kind of doing an average swap size, because again, the liquidity fee that is generated per swap is based on the swap size versus the depth of the pool. And so we kind of looked at 3 hypothetical pool depths for the Matic pool, and then using the average transaction size across the Polygon bridge right now, we kind of basically calculated how much swap volume would we need at each of these pool depths for this Polygon integration to be worth it for the validators. And one thing is, this is actually talking about the Polygon PoS chain. And so we'll rerun these numbers for the zkEVM chain once we get solid numbers on that. But the Polygon full node cost is around $700 per month per validator. And looking at the potential Polygon pool depth, and looking at a average swap size around $8,500, we can see that at a 2 million Matic pool depth, we would need about 1,700 swaps per month to generate enough liquidity fees to cover the cost for all validators. And then Orion also put down our current ETH and AVAX stats. So right now ETH is doing around 5,000 swaps per month, obviously with a much deeper pool. But it kind of goes to show is that $20 million of monthly volume for a Polygon integration, especially with kind of this collaboration between THORChain and the Polygon BD team, Polygon engineering team, and getting plugged into those key ecosystem projects, is very viable. It's a super target that can be hit. And especially thinking about this as kind of a ramp up and kind of an investment in the future as Polygon continues to crush it in the L2 space. We expect this to be even greater as we kind of ride those coattails to say for this integration. So definitely take a look at that doc that Orion posted, and we can definitely use this for other chains as well. Not even if we want to kind of use this analysis for other chains, it can be repeated. But it does seem very exciting, and it does seem very doable.
Yeah, and the last thing I'd kind of echo here, and I alluded to it earlier, right, is that we're really here thinking about it from your shoes, right? And that's been the biggest goal of how we're trying to do stuff is it's not just hey, we want to get the value of having THORSwap or THORChain deployed on Polygon, so let's just throw money at you to do it. It's I personally want to make your bottom line as a validator on THORChain make sense. How do we get there together, right? And that's really the way that things are going to work across the board. And so community feedback, if stuff isn't working, you guys can pass it along to the 9Realm teams or directly to me, you know who I am at this point. And we will actively work on fixing it. I promise you guys are not going to get ghosted. And all of our work is going to be on the THORChain side, is going to be working towards getting this organic buy-in from Polygon.
Absolutely. So let's see, Cal or Gavin, do you guys have any other questions right now? We can probably take some questions from the audience soon.
No, I was just
if people want to come up, then go for it. Sorry, Gavin.
One thought real quick is help everybody that's listening here is one thing that we've done, I think we've been doing our best to do is to start quantifying the decision making around this in terms of bottom line for node operators. profitability for the ecosystem, and not just the short-term stuff, but that point of, long-term growth into a trajectory of where an ecosystem is going and how we can both work together. So also feedback on that side is absolutely welcome from everybody who's here, because the process, as you can see, it's not just like hand wavy around what's going to work and what might work. There's some numbers here. We've got a pretty decent sense of how to work in an ecosystem with a partner, what that could look like in terms of engaging the projects in that ecosystem. And so from that standpoint, it's a lot less speculative in terms of what we're doing right now relative to, what we've seen, maybe 12 months ago. So I'd say that's a step in the right direction, but also from everybody here, feedback is absolutely welcome on that.
So yeah, feel free to come up if you have a question. We can continue to look at the chat to see any other questions in here. So yeah, Oleg positing an idea here. So Polygon providing liquidity. So we temporarily solve the chicken and the egg problem for liquidity versus volume. So yeah, Jack, I don't know if you want to touch on that. I mean, I think what we've done in the past is a bootstrapping mechanism with, treasuries, THORChain treasury, and, another team's treasury. What is kind of the Polygon take on that side?
I'm happy to submit it internally. I know that it's tough to get stuff like this passed, just to be completely candid with you guys, right? Like with the dev ecosystem, like getting these sort of liquidity mining incentives passed right now is really, really hard. And so I'm happy to go in and make a case for it. Ideally, I think we get to a place where we can make the bottom line work from a THORChain and bootstrapping perspective, without necessarily needing to do the liquidity bootstrapping element. But if it's like a necessity, then I'm happy to go into our team and ask. It just then takes it out of my hands, right? And so my goal is to be able to do as much as possible personally for this. And so that does that. I'm also happy to go in and ask about stuff like running nodes, right? That's all stuff. Those are all conversations that we can have. It just will end up changing a little bit of the lift on our end in terms of what we're able to do right off the bat. But the same promises will remain true regardless on the BD front.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, the important thing is, again, getting plugged into the right projects in the Polygon ecosystem, because that's really the point here is we are bridging, like THORChain is meant to support all crypto ecosystems, and that's what we want to do. So if Polygon has like 5, 6, 10 projects, whatever, that are pumped about this integration and that are basically going to launch day one if we roll this out, then like that's a really exciting prospect. And I think in that sense, that's kind of the bootstrapping that's needed, and that's much more effective than any temporary incentives that any treasury could offer.
Yeah, I appreciate
that.
Yeah,
in addition to that, it's just the on-off ramp into these ecosystems, because right now that's very constrained by the actual bridge that Polygon has, and that's pretty much the only on-off ramp into the Polygon ecosystem. And this would create an entirely new way to onboard crypto into the Polygon ecosystem and also off ramp, right? You could think of THORChain as the crypto native on-off ramp into whatever ecosystem we connect to. So that's just another compelling case for a Polygon integration, getting crypto in and out of Polygon without using Polygon's native bridge.
I completely agree, right? And that's always going to be something that people are interested in, even now that we're shifting from a custodial multi-sig bridge to a smart contract-based bridge for zkEVM. There's always going to be people that have outstanding concerns about the outstanding bridge, who want to use a more crypto native bridge, who want to build on a native solution, whatever it is, right? And that's where I think THORChain really steps in and can be head and shoulders above a lot of the other people that I've even been talking to right now. I also wanted to address Asian's question in the chat around reorgs. And so, yeah, that's actually a very fair question, right? Like POS has been suffering from reorgs. Because we would be launching on zkEVM rather than POS, that shouldn't be an issue. Admittedly, like there may be other unforeseen dev headwinds around when you're launching a new chain that we have been live in testnet for a while. The vast majority of them should get worked out. But at the end of the day, the biggest difference for ZK is that it is going to be fully settling on Ethereum, not on Polygon. And so ultimately, any sort of POS sidechain reorgs would completely unaffect anything that we're doing on zkEVM.
Yeah, thanks for addressing that. So Son of Odin, another good question. Who is doing the dev work on this? Nine Realms or Polygon? And I think Jack, in some of our conversations, you mentioned that there are a lot of devs in the Polygon ecosystem that might be interested in helping us with this. And of course, I think if this is a major collaboration that both teams are committed to, Nine Realms is also open to putting some dev cycles into this. So yeah, what's your take on kind of the collaboration of dev work here?
Yeah, no, I think the majority of like the THORChain deployment side is going to be run by the Nine Realms team. Very fortunate to have gotten to talk with them for a while. They're clearly really smart and capable. Where the Polygon dev team can step in is around deployment on zkEVM. Like we will have a standing chat with Nine Realms to have dedicated DevRel support for deployment on zkEVM. Any sorts of questions, concerns, contract related thoughts, hardware concerns, whatever it is, like literally anything, there will be dedicated DevRel support from the Polygon team. That's where I think the experience for both Nine Realms and for the broader THORChain ecosystem is hopefully going to be meaningfully different across a lot of the other deployments that you've done. We're really intending to like be in this together, and I know I keep harping on that, and I know it might be like a little bit wishy-washy, but that's really the way that this has been constructed from day one with the Nine Realms team, is like working side by side to support. We don't pretend to know THORChain or the THORChain ecosystem as well as these guys do, obviously. What we know really well is Polygon and what we're building out. And so the goal is basically to provide all the dev support on the Polygon side that you guys could possibly need around deployment, as well as the BD feet on the ground stuff to basically help allow this thing to be the like autonomous beast that it wants to be, right? Where you do the tech infrastructure and everything else kind of just comes into place through work on the deployment side.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate how exciting that would be, because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but when something goes wrong in an external blockchain, we are pretty much on our own, right? Like we are debugging, the full node infrastructure. We're debugging the connection, and a lot of times, things happen on the external chains, and we don't know about it until it's too late. Gaia messed up a hard fork. So having a dedicated chat with the engineers at Polygon to, facilitate these changes and to ask questions would be, a 0 to 1 improvement over the current integrations that THORChain has. I mean, just this whole mess with the UTXO chains is another example. So I think this is just another really exciting, prospect of this collaboration, where it is a collaboration between the developers in the THORChain ecosystem with the Polygon developers, so that this integration could be, go off without a hitch and be more seamless than the other integrations that we have.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions? Some other people are typing, so we'll see. I'd say, we're at 35 minutes-ish. Don't want to take up too much of Jack's time here. So I would say if you have any other questions, maybe we'll do, 3 or 4 more minutes of questions here.
Yeah, Eridonis, maybe we could talk about the next steps to go forward with this on what we're gonna be doing on our side, and just how to make this thing actually happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from our side, again, we want to look at, take another look at zkEVM, make sure that we understand the full node costs, and do that same analysis that we did for PoS chain, just so that, THORChain validators and ecosystem understand, the cost and the volume targets for both of those integrations. And then I think, working with Jack to like basically canvas the Polygon ecosystem to figure out what are the projects that are interested in this and interested in integrating. And then we can kind of start to paint a more clear picture of the work and the priority, because of course, as Mogarki mentioned, we have started work on BNB chain integration. So I guess the question for the community is like, does this collaboration with Polygon and the potential integrations, is this more exciting right now for us and the validators than the BNB chain integration? And if the validators are on board, and I think we'd probably have to run a vote to see what they think, then we reprioritize the work on our side. So yeah, I think that's from our side what we're thinking. Anything on your side, Jack, that you're thinking about as next steps?
No, next steps for us is just getting a sense of where you guys are at in terms of deployment, and then once we kind of get a sense on timeline for that sort of stuff, we can hit the ground running, right, and start going to bat with you on protocols, getting people connected to the right counterparties on THORChain to build on top of it, and really just go from there.
Awesome.
And Jules, to answer your question, we're not deploying on POS. We're deploying on zkEVM, and so POS is actually going to be completely separate from zkEVM. zkEVM fraud-proof settle on Ethereum, and the bridge is fully non-custodial. It's a smart contract-based bridge. Any assets that exist on ETH are able to be bridged to zkEVM. Yeah, and I'm around for a few more minutes, right? For any last questions that pop up, and if people have outstanding concerns, stuff that comes up later, things that come up during the vote process or further deliberations, Nine Realms teams knows where to reach me. You guys can either message me on Discord or add me or message me on Twitter. Jack Melnick, right? Same name. I just dropped it in chat. Like I'm available for anyone that has thoughts and concerns. Like I want to make sure that everyone feels excited. Same way I do, and the same way I think the Nine Realms team does about the potential for this.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jack. Really appreciate it. I think this was a great conversation. Cal, I think you recorded this, and we'll probably post this somewhere on YouTube or Twitter somewhere.
Yep. It'll be on YouTube later. And also, Jack, so you guys, zkEVM releases later this month, I believe, right? Just a couple weeks, probably 2 weeks or so.
That's right. Yeah, March 27th is go live.
Awesome. So we have a couple weeks to think about strategy here, and we'll definitely get back to you guys with how we're going to go about this. And we need to also figure out the prioritization, BNB chain, Polygon, and just have some more internal discussions about that. Someone requested to speak. Now they're gone.
Yeah, whoever that was, feel free to raise your hand again. All right, just added you. You should be up there. Also, Eridanis, a question just came in from Sammy about integration time. What are you guys thinking in terms of, like, again, let's assume all cylinders firing. What are you guys thinking?
I think it would be a pretty quick integration because it's EVM similar to AVAX and Ethereum. So it'd probably take us a few weeks to write the code, test it on StageNet, and then obviously the longer process is the governance process around the validators, making sure they are on board, of course. So I mean, I'd never want to give an ETA, but the dev work is relatively simple. So who knows how long the validator vote would take.
Great answer. No timeline for specifics.
Yeah.
Soon, TM.
Exactly. Cool. All right. So did that person want to come up, or are we good here?
Yeah, I saw him a little bit ago.
Vodka, you might need to accept the request to come up. Or don't. It's fine.
No worries. If people have follow-up questions, right, like you can even just drop them in the Discord, and the nine realms guys, if you guys don't mind, like if there's a bunch more questions that come in that we want answers to, you can just drop them to me in Telegram, and I'll come back and answer them all.
Sounds good. Amazing.
We got you.
Cool. And as this progresses, we can have another one of these calls down the line. So yeah, this won't be the last time we talk about this on stages. So thanks again, Jack. This was a great conversation.
I appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm super excited to hit the ground on this stuff. Yeah, I think I've said it a million times, so I'll just leave it there. Thanks for having me here.
Oh yeah, awesome. Take care, guys.
See you, everyone.
Y'all.
See you.